A lion moves through grass, still wet with the night. 400 kilometers west, wind tears across a wall of ancient rock nearly 3,500 meters high. On the eastern shore, an ocean that has swallowed ships for 5 centuries hammers a coastline almost no road reaches. Underground, in the dark, water has been building stone columns for 1,000,000 years. This is one country, one set of borders, and inside them, savanna, canyon, wetland, desert, river, mountain, cave, and coast. How can a single country hold so many completely different natural worlds? Over the next 20 minutes, we travel from Big Five wilderness to ancient mountain escarpments, from tropical wetlands to a coastline named for its shipwrecks, from Africa's underground cathedrals to a river that falls into a granite chasm in the desert. This is South Africa at full scale. To understand South Africa's geography, start with a single feature that shapes almost everything else: the Great Escarpment. It is a near-continuous rim of high ground that runs like a curved spine for thousands of kilometers, separating the elevated interior plateau from the coastal lowlands. On one side, dry, high-veld grassland. On the other, a steep drop into subtropical valleys. That single step in the Earth's surface is why South Africa's climate, rivers, and ecosystems change so violently over such short distances. Rain, falling a few kilometers apart, can run to 2 different oceans, through 2 entirely different worlds. Everything we are about to see sits somewhere along that edge, above it, below it, or carved directly into it. Our journey begins where the escarpment is at its most theatrical, the northeast, in Mpumalanga, where a river has spent millions of years cutting into the plateau's edge. The Blyde River Canyon is roughly 25 kilometers long, and in places its walls fall around 700 to 800 meters from rim to river. What makes it unusual isn't only depth. Most of the world's great canyons are arid, bare rock, exposed strata, little vegetation. Blyde is green. Subtropical moisture rising off the low veld condenses against the escarpment, so the quartzite and shale cliffs are draped in forest, cycads, and mist. Geologists read those cliff faces like a book. Layered sandstones and quartzites laid down in ancient shallow seas, then lifted and slowly stripped by the river. The most photographed formation is the 3 Rondavels, 3 rounded peaks whose harder rock caps resisted erosion while everything around them was carried away. Below them, the river feeds a reservoir that fills the canyon floor with still, jade-colored water. Access is genuinely easy, which is part of why it became one of the country's defining landscapes. The panorama route links viewpoints by tarred road, God's Window, Wonderview, and the Burke's Luck potholes, where 2 rivers meet and swirl cylindrical shafts into the bedrock. For drama, come in the late summer and early autumn months, from February to April. The rains have filled the rivers, the vegetation is at its most saturated, and mornings bring cloud inversions that pour over the rim and vanish in the sun. Descend the escarpment eastward, and the air thickens. This is the low-veld, hot, low-lying savanna, and here sits Kruger National Park, roughly 20,000 square kilometers of protected wilderness, larger than several countries. Kruger is not a single habitat. Its western half sits on granite, producing undulating country with sandy soils and dense bush. The eastern half is basalt, flatter, with richer grasses that support enormous grazing herds. That geological divide is the reason the park's wildlife distributes the way it does. Rangers here talk less about ticking off the Big Five and more about reading the system, where the grass is, where the water is, and who follows. In the dry winter months, from roughly May to September, the bush thins, surface water disappears, and animals concentrate along the rivers. Visibility is at its best, the light is clean, and the mornings are cold and clear. Green season, from November to March, is harder for spotting but spectacular for atmosphere. Towering thunderheads, newborn impala, migrant birds arriving in their hundreds of thousands. Kruger is also unusually accessible for a wilderness of this size. Tarred roads run its length, self-drive is normal, and private concessions on its unfenced western boundary allow off-road tracking with guides who know individual leopards by name and territory. South and east of Kruger, along the KwaZulu-Natal coast, the country changes character entirely. Isimangaliso Wetland Park stretches for roughly 220 kilometers of shoreline and protects something almost nowhere else on the continent manages. 5 interlinked ecosystems stacked side by side. Coral reefs, the southernmost in Africa. Long sand-forested dunes among the highest vegetated dunes in the world. Lake St. Lucia, a vast estuarine lake that swings between fresh and salt depending on rainfall and the sea. Papyrus swamps and grassland. And offshore, the open Indian Ocean. In practical terms, this means a place where hippos and crocodiles share water with bull sharks, where leatherback and loggerhead turtles haul out onto beaches to nest between November and February, and where humpback whales pass close to shore on migration between June and November. It became South Africa's first UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1999, and conservationists here describe their work less as protecting animals and more as protecting connections, the water flow between lake, swamp, and sea that everything else depends on. Access is straightforward from the town of St. Lucia. The wilder northern sections towards Kosi Bay and the Mozambique border need four-wheel drive and time. Now we turn inland, and the escarpment reaches its full height. The Drakensberg, the Dragon Mountains, or in isiZulu, Ukahlamba, the Barrier of Spears, form the highest range in southern Africa. Its peaks approach 3,500 meters, and its most famous feature is the amphitheater, a wall of basalt roughly 5 kilometers wide and around 1,000 meters high. Over that wall drops the Tugela Falls, one of the tallest waterfall systems on Earth, plunging in a series of leaps of nearly 1 kilometer in total. Geologically, the Drakensberg is volcanic memory. Around 180 million years ago, as the supercontinent Gondwana tore apart, lava flooded across the region in sheets thousands of meters thick. The hard basalt cap survives. The softer sandstone beneath erodes away, producing the range's characteristic sheer walls above rolling foothills. The Malote Drakensberg region is a World Heritage Site for 2 reasons, natural and cultural. Tucked into overhangs across these mountains are tens of thousands of sand rock paintings, some thousands of years old, the record of hunter-gatherer people who read this landscape long before it was mapped. Summer, from December to February, brings violent afternoon thunderstorms and the fullest waterfalls. But winter is the connoisseur's season, dry, brilliantly clear, and cold enough that snow dusts the high peaks, something few visitors associate with Africa. Access ranges from comfortable resorts in the foothills to serious multi-day hiking, and above the escarpment, there are no roads at all. From the mountains, follow the rivers east until the land runs out. The Wild Coast is a stretch of roughly 250 kilometers of eastern Cape shoreline, and it earned its name, honestly, There is no coastal highway. Rivers cut straight to the sea through deep green valleys. Cliffs drop directly into surf, and the seabed here has claimed ships for centuries. Portuguese carracks, colonial steamers, modern trawlers. This is the former Transkei, a region of rolling grassland hills scattered with round homesteads, cattle paths, and few fences. The landmark that defines it is Hole in the Wall, a detached cliff island the sea is punched clean through, where every swell explodes through the gap with a boom you feel in the ground. Just north, at Waterfall Bluff, a river drops directly off a cliff into the Indian Ocean, a genuinely rare geography. Offshore, between June and July, the Sardine Run takes place. Cold water shoals moving northeast along this coast, followed by thousands of dolphins, sharks, gannets, and whales in one of the largest predator aggregations on the planet. Getting here takes commitment. Access is by rough gravel roads or on foot. The multi-day hiking trails between river mouths are among the most rewarding walks in the country. Local guides, often from the villages the trail passes through, are not a luxury here. They are how you find the safe river crossings. Westward, the coast softens. The Garden Route runs roughly from Storms River to Mossel Bay, pressed between the Indian Ocean and the Outeniqua and Titicaca Mountains. It is one of the wettest regions in South Africa, and that rainfall sustains something scarce here. Temperate Afromontane forest, with yellowwood trees hundreds of years old. At Titicaca, the Storms River carves a dark gorge to the sea, crossed by a suspension bridge where the fresh water meets the swell. Just inland lie the Knysna Lagoon and the Wilderness Lakes, a chain of estuarine waterways separated from the ocean by dunes. The forest here is famous for what it may no longer hold. The Knysna elephants, a population reduced to almost nothing, and now a symbol of how quickly abundance can vanish. That story finds its answer an hour or two east at Addo Elephant National Park. Addo was proclaimed in 1931 to save 11 surviving elephants from a local extermination campaign. Today, the park protects well over 600 in dense spec boom thicket that is itself remarkable, a succulent shrubland exceptionally good at storing carbon and now used in restoration projects across the arid Karoo. Addo also lies outside the malaria zone, which makes it one of the country's most practical Big Five destinations for families. Come between October and April, when the heat drives elephants to the waterholes in extraordinary numbers. Turn inland from the coast, cross the Outeniqua Mountains, and the air dries out within a single mountain pass. This is the Little Karoo, and beneath its limestone foothills near Oudtshoorn lies one of the journey's biggest surprises, the Cango Caves. The caves formed in a band of Precambrian limestone that is hundreds of millions of years old. Slightly acidic rainwater seeped down through fractures, dissolving the rock into chambers, then redepositing dissolved calcite drop by drop to build stalactites, stalagmites, and columns. Some of these formations are over 9 meters tall and have taken hundreds of thousands of years to grow. The known system extends more than 4 kilometers, though only the first section is open to visitors. Cango has been used for far longer than it has been a tourist attraction. Stone tools and traces of occupation at the entrance chamber show people sheltering here thousands of years ago. Today, caves are strictly managed. Lighting, airflow, and visitor numbers are all controlled because human breath and body heat alter the chemistry that formed these structures in the first place. There are 2 options: a standard walking tour through the Great Chambers, and an adventure route that involves crawling through passages barely wider than your shoulders. Underground, the temperature holds steady all year, which makes this the one destination in this film with no season at all. For the final chapter, we go north and west into the true arid interior, where the northern Cape meets the Kalahari's edge. Here, the Orange River, the longest river in South Africa, gathering its water from the Drakensberg and the Lesotho highlands 1,000 kilometers away, arrives in the country that receives barely any rain at all. And then it disappears. At Algrabis, the river narrows and drops around 56 meters into a granite gorge that runs for 18 kilometers and reaches 240 meters deep. The Nama people called it Auko Erebus, the place of great noise. In flood, that name is not poetic. The main fall is joined by dozens of secondary channels, and the sound arrives before the sight. The gorge itself is a lesson in patience and violence. Its walls are smooth, exfoliated granite, polished by water and by wind-blown sand, cut over millions of years by a river carrying grit from half a subcontinent. The surrounding landscape is stark: quiver trees, black rock, sparse desert scrub, clipped springers on the ledges. Time your visit for late summer, February to April, when the summer rains far upstream finally reach here and the falls run at full volume. In the dry season, it becomes a different place entirely. Quieter, more skeletal, and if anything, more revealing of the raw rock beneath. It sits about 120 kilometers from Upington on tarred road, but the nearest big city is a long day's drive. That remoteness is part of the experience. At night, the desert sky above the gorge is among the darkest in the country. So how does one country hold all of this? Partly geology, an ancient plateau, a volcanic past, and a single great step in the earth that splits the interior from the sea. Partly geography, two oceans meeting at the southern tip, one warm, one cold, polar weather and life in opposite directions. And partly choice. Almost every landscape in this film survives inside a boundary that someone argued for. A national park proclaimed to save 11 elephants, a wetland protected for the water that links it, mountains listed for both their rock and their paintings, a coast still wild largely because it was never made easy. Travel this country in a single trip, and the contrasts become almost absurd. Frost on the high Drakensberg in the morning, coral reefs on the same latitude band, elephants in dense, succulent thicket, a desert river falling into granite, a million years of dripping water, building columns in the dark, an hour's drive from a temperate rainforest. This is not one landscape with variations. These are separate natural worlds, sharing a passport. Which of these wild places would you explore first? Or have you explored one already?